Ethan Miller arrived in Vancouver on a cold gray afternoon, carrying only 2 suitcases and a heart that felt heavier than both combined. He had left Seattle in a rush, not because he wanted a fresh start, but because staying there meant waking up every day to memories that tightened around him like a rope. His long relationship had ended only 12 days earlier, and even though he tried to act calm, the pain still sat behind his ribs. The new apartment was small and quiet, with bare walls and faint echoes, making the emptiness of his life feel even louder. He had hoped a new city would give him space to breathe, but that first night, sitting alone on the floor with takeout boxes stacked beside him, he realized that healing never moved as quickly as people wished. Across the street lived Claire Thompson, a graphic designer who had always been full of color and hope until her own heartbreak drained both from her life. She had ended a 5-year relationship not long before Ethan moved in. The breakup left her feeling confused and defeated, as if someone had quietly stolen the parts of her that made her feel secure. She worked from home most days, forcing herself to finish projects so she wouldn't drown in thoughts about why her partner had drifted so far away from her. She told her friends she was fine, but when the apartment fell silent at night, she wrapped herself in a blanket and wondered why love could disappear without warning. Neither Ethan nor Claire knew about each other yet, but life had a way of placing 2 broken hearts on the same street at the same moment, waiting for the right spark to pull them into each other's orbit. Their first meeting happened on an ordinary evening. Claire returned from the grocery store with heavy bags pulling against her fingers. She tried to balance them while grabbing her keys, but one slipped, rolled down a step, and wobbled toward the sidewalk. Before she could react, someone moved quickly and caught it. She lifted her eyes and found a stranger standing there, breath visible in the cold air. His expression calm but tired, as if he had weathered his own storms. Ethan handed her the bag with a small nod. It was a simple gesture, but to Claire, who had spent weeks feeling unseen, it felt unexpectedly kind. "Thank you," she said softly, the words almost a whisper. She tried to hide the sadness in her voice, but Ethan heard it anyway because he recognized that same sadness inside himself. He didn't say much, just offered a gentle smile before stepping back to give her space. She watched him walk away, noticing the slump in his shoulders, the quiet heaviness in his steps. She didn't know his name yet, but she sensed something familiar in him, something that mirrored her own emotions. After that, their paths crossed often. At first, it was only short greetings, small waves, polite smiles, brief nods. But over time, those small moments grew into short conversations about the weather, the neighborhood, or whatever seemed easy to say. Claire found herself looking forward to those moments, even if she didn't want to admit it. Ethan felt the same. He didn't want anything complicated, but something about Claire's presence made the days feel less heavy. One morning they met outside at the same time, both heading out for a walk. Instead of going separate ways, they naturally fell into step beside each other. Ethan talked about exploring the city, and Claire shared her favorite coffee shops nearby. Their voices were quiet, but their hearts felt lighter. They walked together for nearly an hour without realizing it, and when they eventually parted, Ethan stood at his doorway for a moment, surprised by how peaceful he felt. Claire also felt the shift. Her apartment didn't seem as cold that evening. She caught herself thinking about the way Ethan listened, how he didn't fill the silence with unnecessary words, how he didn't judge or try to impress her. He simply existed beside her, steady and calm, something she didn't know she needed. Still, both of them carried scars from their pasts. Ethan often replayed the moment he discovered messages that changed everything between him and Melissa, his former girlfriend. He remembered sitting in his car outside her building, feeling numb as he scrolled through conversations that revealed betrayal. Trust, once broken, didn't heal quickly, and even though he had moved cities, the wound followed him. Claire carried her own set of memories. She remembered nights where she sat across from Daniel, her ex-partner, talking about her day while he scrolled through his phone without looking up. At first, she excused it as stress or distraction, but slowly, she realized she had become invisible to him. When she finally gathered the courage to end things, he looked more annoyed than heartbroken. That expression stayed with her, haunting her even now. 2 wounded hearts trying to heal alone, unaware that the universe was slowly pushing them toward each other. As weeks passed, Ethan and Claire grew more comfortable. They shared coffee on their porches when the mornings were warm enough, talked about simple things like music, work, or the best places to eat nearby. Every conversation felt natural, effortless, as if they were replacing small broken pieces inside each other without realizing it. One evening, while Claire watered the plants on her balcony, Ethan called out from below, asking if she wanted to try a new bakery he had found. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if she was ready for something that felt like the beginning of a friendship, or maybe something more, but she agreed. They walked together through the quiet streets, talking about childhood memories, future dreams, and the fears they didn't share with anyone else. Claire noticed how easy it was to laugh with him, and Ethan realized he hadn't smiled genuinely in months until that night. But the deeper they drifted into each other's lives, the more complicated things felt beneath the surface. Claire often caught herself wondering why her heart raced when she saw Ethan approaching, or why his presence eased the loneliness she had carried for months. Ethan felt the same confusion, noticing how he looked for her in every corner, how talking to her made him forget the pain that once dominated his days. They didn't say anything aloud, unwilling to admit that something fragile and uncertain was forming between them. Then came the evening that changed everything. Claire was coming home after visiting a friend when she saw Ethan sitting on the steps of his building. His head was tilted back as if he had been staring at the sky for a long time. When she approached, he smiled, but it was faint. She sat beside him without asking what was wrong, and he began talking about Seattle, about how difficult it had been to leave a life behind, even one that hurt him. Claire didn't interrupt. She simply listened, offering quiet comfort. Eventually, she started sharing her own story, how Daniel's distance broke her confidence, how she questioned her worth for weeks after the breakup. The air around them shifted. They weren't just talking anymore. They were opening parts of themselves they usually kept hidden. When Ethan finally stood to leave, they found themselves standing close, closer than usual, close enough that Claire felt her breath catch in her throat. Ethan looked at her as if unsure of what to say. She stepped back first, breaking the moment before it grew into something neither was ready for. "We're both still healing," she whispered. Ethan nodded, letting the moment settle between them. They parted ways with quiet goodnight wishes, both pretending the moment had meant nothing, even though it echoed in their minds long after they walked inside their homes. Neither of them knew that this small moment was only the beginning. Neither knew how quickly their lives would change again. Neither knew the emotional crossroads waiting just ahead. And as they fell asleep that night, each carrying a mix of comfort and confusion, life quietly prepared the next chapter, one that would test their hearts more than either expected. The next days moved faster than either Ethan or Claire expected. Their quiet friendship, which had started as simple comfort, began to shift into something deeper without either of them planning it. Claire tried to ignore the small excitement she felt whenever she saw Ethan walking toward her building. Ethan did the same, pushing down the warmth he felt when she smiled at him. They kept telling themselves they were only helping each other heal, nothing more, nothing dangerous. But emotions had a way of growing in the empty places of a heart, and both of them had plenty of empty spaces. One rainy Saturday became the turning point. Claire woke up to gray skies and heavy clouds, the kind of weather that made the world slow down. She felt restless, unable to focus on work, unable to sit still. She grabbed her jacket and walked to the small cafe 2 blocks away, hoping a warm drink would settle her thoughts. When she pushed the door open, she saw Ethan sitting alone near the window, staring outside with a distant look. Before she could decide whether to join him or leave quietly, he looked up. His face lit up with a soft smile, the kind that made her feel seen. He waved her over, and she walked to his table without thinking twice. They ordered coffee, shared a small pastry, and started talking. At first, they kept the conversation light, but the longer they sat there, the deeper their words became. Ethan finally spoke about the betrayal he had gone through, something he had avoided for weeks. He explained how he found messages that showed Melissa had been talking to someone else behind his back, how he felt the world tilt when he read them, how he couldn't breathe that night. He didn't speak with anger. He spoke with a quiet sadness that felt heavier than rage. Claire listened without interrupting. She understood that kind of pain too well. When Ethan finished, she slowly opened up about her own heartbreak, how Daniel had slowly drifted away from her, how she waited for his attention, how she felt like a shadow in her own home. She described the loneliness that ate at her. The nights she cried quietly so he wouldn't hear. She wasn't embarrassed telling Ethan these things. For the first time in months, she felt safe enough to speak honestly. Their honesty softened something between them. They didn't hold hands or touch, but the air around them felt warm, gentle, and full of unspoken understanding. As the rain hit the windows, they talked for hours. The world outside faded away, and the cafe became a small bubble where two wounded hearts finally felt understood. But as their connection deepened, the complications began to grow as well. Claire's phone buzzed later that night with a message from Daniel. He wrote a long apology saying he wanted to meet, saying he had made mistakes, saying he still cared. Claire stared at the message with shaking hands. Part of her wanted to ignore it, but another part of her felt pulled back by the familiar history they shared. She didn't respond. She simply placed her phone face down and sat in silence. Ethan faced his own unexpected twist. Melissa, his ex, returned to Vancouver for a work project. When she found out he had moved to the neighborhood where she often traveled for meetings, she started sending short messages too, asking if he wanted to talk, if they could meet, if there was a chance to explain things properly. Ethan didn't respond either, but he felt a sting of confusion. Healing was already difficult, but revisiting the past made it even harder. Over the next week, Ethan and Claire met often. They cooked simple meals, walked through the city, sat by the water, shared music, and talked about everything except the growing closeness between them. They told themselves they were becoming good friends, but the truth was becoming harder to hide. Every laugh felt a little warmer. Every look lingered a little too long. Every goodbye lasted a little too slow. One evening, Claire invited Ethan inside after they returned from a long walk. By the waterfront. She made tea while Ethan looked around her living room, noticing the small details that made it feel like a home. Plants, framed drawings, soft blankets draped over the couch. He realized how much gentleness lived in the spaces she created, even after all the hurt she had experienced. They sat on the couch with steaming mugs, talking about their dreams for the future. Travel places, favorite cities, goals they once had before heartbreak changed their lives. Ethan spoke about wanting to start fresh, maybe find a new job, maybe build something meaningful. Claire shared her wish to someday open her own design studio, something she had always pushed aside during her relationship with Daniel. As she talked, Ethan watched her with quiet admiration. Her eyes brightened when she spoke about her dreams, and Ethan realized she wasn't as broken as she thought. She was simply rebuilding. As the conversation slowed, a gentle silence filled the room. They both felt it, the unspoken pull they had been ignoring for weeks. Ethan placed his mug down and stood up slowly, but he didn't step back right away. Claire stood as well, and suddenly they were standing close, too close, with only a few inches of air between them. Ethan's heartbeat grew loud in his ears. Claire's breath trembled. They didn't touch. They didn't move. They just stood there, caught in a moment neither had expected so soon. Something shifted in the quiet air. Something warm and frightening and beautiful. Claire was the first to break the moment. She stepped back gently, forcing a small smile even though her chest felt tight. "We're both still healing," she whispered, echoing the same words she had said before. Ethan nodded, though the look in his eyes revealed the struggle inside him. He wanted to stay close to her. He wanted to let the moment unfold. But he also respected her hesitation. They were two hearts learning how to breathe again, and neither wanted to rush into something fragile. Ethan said goodnight and left, walking across the quiet street with the cool night air brushing against his face. Claire closed her door and leaned her back against it, feeling her heart beat too fast. She touched her chest gently, trying to calm herself, trying to convince her heart that she had made the right decision. She wasn't ready. She wasn't sure. She didn't want to make the same mistake she made with Daniel, falling too fast, ignoring warning signs. But as she stood there alone, she realized something important. The moment with Ethan didn't feel like her past. It felt new, tender, hopeful. And that scared her even more. Ethan lay on his couch, staring at the ceiling. He wasn't angry. He understood her completely. But the moment played in his mind again and again. The closeness, the silence, the warmth in her eyes. He knew now that he cared for her more than he expected to. He didn't know if she felt the same, but he hoped she did. For the next few days, their interactions felt slightly different. They were still close, still comfortable, but something more lived beneath the surface. They walked slower when they were together, listened more closely, smiled more softly. Emotional tension hung between them, warm but unspoken. But the quiet balance didn't last long. One morning, Claire received another message from Daniel, this time asking to meet in person. He claimed he had changed, that he realized what he lost, that he wanted to fix things. She didn't know how to feel. Memories pulled her backward while her heart slowly leaned forward toward Ethan. Ethan faced his own struggle when Melissa appeared outside his building one afternoon. She looked nervous, holding her bag tightly, asking if they could talk. Ethan didn't know what to say. Part of him wanted closure, part of him wanted distance, and part of him wondered how this would affect the fragile connection growing between him and Claire. Both of them were being pulled in two directions. The past that once broke them and the uncertain but gentle connection that waited in the present. The emotional crossroads was now impossible to ignore. And neither of them knew how the next decision would change everything. The morning after Claire received Daniel's message and Ethan faced Melissa at his door, the air on their quiet street felt heavier than usual. Both of them woke up early, unable to sleep, their minds running in circles around the choices they had to make. The past was tugging at them with familiar hands, while the present whispered something softer, something new, something uncertain. Neither of them knew how to face the day without thinking about the other. Claire walked to the kitchen, made coffee but hardly drank it. She kept looking at her phone, reading Daniel's message again and again. He wanted to meet, he wanted to talk, he claimed he had changed. For a moment she felt the old pull of history, the long years she had spent with him. 5 years was not easy to ignore. She remembered the trips they took, the memories they made, the good times before everything blurred into cold silence. But the pain was also part of her memory. The nights she cried alone, the way he looked past her, the moments she felt invisible. Meanwhile, Ethan stood by his living room window, replaying the moment Melissa appeared unexpectedly. She had asked to talk, saying she was sorry, saying she wasn't thinking clearly before, saying she missed him. Ethan didn't hate her. He only felt tired. Tired of the emotional weight, tired of the confusion, tired of holding on to something that had already broken. Yet seeing her again stirred up pieces he thought he had buried after leaving Seattle. He wondered whether talking to her would finally close that part of his life for good, or open old wounds again. Hours passed before either of them stepped outside. Claire decided to take a walk to clear her head. Ethan had the same idea. They met halfway down the street, both looking surprised but relieved. Their eyes held the same question, though neither asked it aloud. "Are you okay?" They walked quietly for a while, letting the cool wind fill the silence. It wasn't awkward. It was simply cautious, like two people trying to protect something fragile inside themselves. Finally, Claire spoke first. "Daniel wants to meet," she said in a low voice. Ethan nodded slowly. "Melissa showed up at my door yesterday." They stopped walking. Claire looked at him with a mixture of worry and curiosity. Ethan looked back, trying to read what she wasn't saying. It felt like a moment where one wrong sentence could push them both backward. They didn't want to lose each other, but they also didn't want to rush into something without clarity. "What are you going to do?" Claire asked softly. "I don't know," Ethan said honestly. "But I don't want to go back. I just need to make sure I'm moving forward for the right reasons." Claire exhaled shakily. "I feel the same." They reached a bench near the water and sat down. The sunlight reflected off the surface, making everything glow. It was peaceful, but inside both felt a storm building. Claire rested her hands on her lap, gripping them gently. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the horizon like he was searching for answers. After a long pause, Claire finally said something she had been afraid to admit. "I don't want to meet him because I miss him. I want to meet him because part of me needs to hear the truth to understand what really happened. And maybe I need that to fully let go." Ethan turned toward her. Her voice was steady, but her eyes revealed the conflict inside her. He respected her honesty. He knew the past had to be faced before the future could be real. "And you?" Claire asked, her voice almost a whisper. "Will you talk to Melissa?" "I think I need to," Ethan replied. "Not to fix anything. Just to close the door properly." Their words felt like confessions. They weren't promising anything to each other, but their honesty created a quiet closeness that felt stronger than Before, they didn't touch, but the distance between them felt smaller. They walked back slowly. At their buildings they stopped again. Ethan looked at her with gentle concern. Whatever happens, just know you don't have to go through any of it alone. Claire's throat tightened. Neither do you. Then they went inside, each preparing to face the past. Claire met Daniel first. They sat at a quiet cafe downtown, a place they used to visit often. When she walked in, Daniel stood up with an apologetic smile. He looked tired, maybe even regretful. But Claire didn't feel the same connection she once did. As they talked, Daniel explained how he had been overwhelmed with work, how he didn't know how to handle the distance he created, how he realized too late that he had pushed her away. He said he still cared, that he believed they could fix things. Claire listened carefully, but something felt different inside her. His words didn't sink into her heart the way they once would have. She felt compassion but not longing. She felt relief, not desire. She realized she had spent months hurting for someone who had only now found the courage to admit what she knew all along. When Daniel finally asked if she wanted to try again, Claire took a deep breath. I don't think going back would heal anything, she said gently. We became strangers long before we broke up, and I don't want to return to something that made me feel invisible. Daniel looked stunned. He wasn't angry, just disappointed. He nodded slowly, accepting her decision. Claire left the cafe with her heart lighter, feeling something inside her release. For the first time in a long time she felt free. Ethan met Melissa that evening at a park near the waterfront. She seemed nervous, fiddling with her sleeves, eyes darting around before meeting his. She apologized again, explained again, said she had been careless, confused, unsure of what she wanted at that time. She said she missed their life, missed the comfort, missed the relationship they had built. Ethan listened quietly, but as she talked he realized he wasn't feeling the sorrow or longing he expected. He felt gratitude for the good memories, and sadness for how it ended, but no desire to rebuild it again. Her words didn't reach him the way they once did. He had changed. His heart had drifted toward something new, something gentler. When she finally asked if they could try again, Ethan shook his head softly. I cared about you, he said. But what we had ended the day, trust was broken. Going back wouldn't fix it. It would only restart the same hurt. Melissa nodded with teary eyes, understanding even if it hurt. They ended their conversation on peaceful terms, giving each other closure that had been missing for months. Ethan walked home feeling lighter, as if he had finally closed a door he had been carrying on his shoulders. Later that night, Claire stepped outside to breathe the cool air. At the same time, Ethan walked out of his building, needing a moment to think. They met in the middle of the street again, as if the universe knew exactly where to place them. You talked to him? Ethan asked gently. Claire nodded. And you? He nodded too. They stood there for a moment, facing each other fully without fear. Everything around them went quiet. The streetlights glowed softly, the breeze brushed past them, and the world felt still. Claire spoke first. I didn't choose the past. Ethan's voice was soft. Neither did I. They took a small step toward each other, not rushing, not forcing anything, just choosing the present with slow, steady honesty. Claire looked up at him with eyes that no longer carried confusion. Ethan looked at her with a calm certainty he hadn't felt in months. Whatever this becomes, Claire whispered, I want to move slowly, carefully. Ethan smiled softly. We'll take every step together. They didn't hold hands. They didn't rush into declarations. They simply walked side by side under the soft night sky, two hearts finally free to choose healing over history. For the first time, their story didn't feel like a tragedy or a rebound. It felt like a beginning, not perfect but full of hope. And sometimes that's the most beautiful kind of love there is.